My friends, the great experiment.
Discovery. Hidden. Trick.
Would you look at that?
The greatest trick.
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
The greatest trick.
Welcome to Greatest Trek. It's a new Star Trek podcast from the makers of The Greatest Generation. I'm Ben Harrison.
I'm Adam Pranica. It's been a few days since we watched the series finale, Star Trek Discovery. That's the amount of time when you want your feelings to bake in, right? You don't want to fly off the handle right away. You want to sleep on it once or even twice, right?
Couple of sleeps.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have perfectly cohesive, cogent ideas in my head about this 5-season Star Trek series, and the one that kicked off the new Trek revolution.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah. Do you remember the excitement surrounding just the idea of new Trek? It had been many years since Star Trek had been on television. I remember when the J.J. Abrams movies came out, I was such a fiend for anything Star Trek related that I would go on websites that were purportedly posting the screenplay, and I was reading drafts of screenplays that I thought were real.
No kidding.
Just to get anything. That's how much I needed it.
I didn't know that they made methadone in PDF format.
Yeah, I was really hungry for it at the time, and I remember when we were doing Greatest Gen, people would come out of the woodwork and be like, hey, I work in media. I can help you with access and stuff. And that seemed like such a great opportunity for two dorks in a basement, doing a Star Trek show. It's an opportunity that seemed too good to be true in the case of Ben Fritz, like a guy who is real and really great, who offered us a chance to go and see the premiere of the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
What a moment.
Amazing. And now Ben Fritz lives a few blocks from me and our children play together.
Yeah. I love Ben Fritz.
The fact that you got to go to that premiere was so cool. Tell me what you remember about going. Tell me what the vibe was there, because everybody had been missing Star Trek for a long time.
A couple of things. Seeing the premiere in a proper movie theater was exhilarating because Star Trek on TV looked up until then fairly cinematic, but there had been a number of years since the last time it had been on television. And to experience season 1, episode 1 of Star Trek Discovery in the brightest, clearest, biggest, beautifulest format with a bunch of folks who were so excited to be there. It was exhilarating.
A BBF, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. And they had people in full costume. This is one of the first times I'd ever seen the interview line, the red carpet. This is like a proper LA premiere of a thing. And this is far before I moved to LA. And
that just became a Tuesday for you.
I don't live far away from Hollywood, so it's not routine to see this just in town, but to have flown to LA in order to see this with Ben Fritz and to see these people in real life, to see people dressed in costume, to see stars of the show who we didn't really know at that point, and also the alumni stars of Star Trek there was thrilling. And Ben Fritz was such good company for this as a media professional. If you didn't know he worked in that area, you would just think that he's the most unflappable guy. I felt like I had to tamp my shit down to get on his level because he's so cool and chill. I was so excited to see Jason Isaacs at the after party. I was like, holy shit, man, I can't believe he's standing right there. I'm going to go grab a champagne right next to him. And Ben's like, yeah, man, he's here.
He's in the show.
Yeah, he could not be more the way you need to be in LA when you're around people in the industry. And that was very instructive for me at the time.
Yeah, it's impossible to imagine Ben Fritz being starstruck.
Right. I'll tell you who I was starstruck by more than anyone was Nana Visitor at that party was wearing this flowing silver dress. She walked into the party like she was floating. Like the whole room stopped.
Man.
It was incredible.
God, the coolest. I was rewatching just like the complete story so far. One of those things that came out like before season 5 started, just to kind of like remind myself all of the places that Discovery has been and has gone. And it's such a unique series in Star Trek. We had a bunch of listener questions that were submitted. Do you want to start with some questions?
Yeah, let's talk about what this show's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of our recollections before, during, and toward the end of Star Trek Discovery as a series. We're going to get a little help from the Friends of DeSoto, who submitted some excellent questions and topics on all of our social media feeds. Thanks to Rob Adler for soliciting those. And thanks to the FODs for sending them in.
Yeah, and then we're also going to check in with an old friend of the show and this show's original producer, Rob Schulte. And maybe we'll finish off with, we did some polls as well to take people's temperature on the show. So why don't we jump in to the questions and answers segment of this podcast.
You know the greatest danger facing us is an irrational fear of the unknown. Unknown.
Black alert.
Unknown.
Black alert.
Ben, our first question is from the Discord. And if you're an FOD who hasn't joined the Discord, you should do that. It's drunkshimoda.com. It's where you can go to meet a ton of other FODs, including Dr. Banjo. And their question goes like this. Hey, Ben and Adam, Discovery has a very distinct visual style and often takes filming risks. In parentheses, Burnham walking down a sparky hallway, 180-degree flip shots, etc. Do you think this complex visual style helped or hurt the show overall?
Boy, it's a great question and definitely something I was thinking about a lot as I was watching footage compiled over the course of the previous 4 seasons, because I do feel like visually the show has evolved somewhat. I mean, part of it is that virtual reality volume that they shoot in where they have like the screen of LEDs behind them and they can make it look like they're in any environment.
Right.
I think that's a season 4 and 5 only innovation. But those crazy camera flippy shots and stuff like that are such a specifically disco hallmark look. And I kind of love it. Like, I kind of love how much disco is about just making you feel upside down and reminding you that anything can happen at any time, just in its like visual storytelling style.
Right.
And every time they need to like really awe you, like for example, going into the progenitor hole or traveling through time, or, you know, even just like the visuals of the Battle of the Binary Stars, like they have really like set some pretty high bars for themselves in the writing. Like, this is going to be an amazing looking thing is not something that always like translates from the page to the screen. And I think that consistently Discovery has been like super beautiful and super visually impressive. And I think that it's only helped the show in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any question that the visual style helped the show. And in places where story wasn't always great or interesting, I think as a creator of a television show or a movie, it must be great to have that to lean on. Like, your floor is so high for a show if the visual is this strong.
Yeah.
That I think it makes a great foundation to put anything else on top of. Like, absolutely first-rate production design, incredible sets, incredible effects, the whole way through.
And just like down to like technique. And like, this is something that I think both of us can appreciate as lapsed practitioners of the filmmaking arts. Like, when you see a camera move the way that it moves in Discovery and have done camera movement before, it is so fucking stressful to imagine. Like, hey, we got to make our day, but this camera needs to flip 360 and then like zoom in on this person's, you know, eyeball and the focus needs to be nailed the entire time. Like, that is so hard to do when you're on a tight timeline. And I was just watching this recap going like, God damn, like so many grips put in such incredible work just to like make this show look as unique as it does.
In the same way that digital video changed how independent film worked in technique and in appearance, I think the advent and the onboarding of the camera gimbal as a device used in TV and film production changed so much about everything that followed. Like, there's a moment in time where the gimbal became a thing, and a good gimbal, I mean, like the 3-axis gyroscopic. Right. Like, I was just getting out of production when those things were coming in, and I was just starting to experiment with them in a fun way.
Yeah.
And isn't it so often how it is in film and TV production? Like, a piece of tech just changes so much, more than you think.
It really does, yeah. Like, I have a really good friend who's a gaffer. He works in New York, and he has lit all kinds of stuff, like commercials you've seen. He's lit, like, you know, when the Kardashians get a beach house on Long Island for the summer, he'll light that. And he used to be a stage manager at a green screen stage that I shot a few music videos at, and he would always talk about the 7D DP because when Canon released the 7D, suddenly there was like an SLR that could shoot video that was like within the range of affordability for a lot of kind of new young professionals. And just the ability to like rack focus made a lot of people think that they were directors of photography. And yet, like, suddenly every, website was like, we're pivoting to video. Like, we can make things that look cinematic and good for pretty cheap. And I was caught up in that, man.
Yeah, I was a 7D filmmaker.
Like you said, like that gimbal toward the end of my video career, after I'd moved to LA, I got hired for a job where I was in Michigan shooting something. I was like second camera on this shoot, and the main guy had just brought like an Osmo, and it was like running around like this factory that we were shooting in. And I had my big bulky Canon C300 Mark II that I'd spent $12,000 on.
Yeah. And
I was like sweating, and I was like getting shakier, shittier looking shots than he was with his like $1,200 handheld, thing that looked like a lollipop. And I was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
I really did not call this one right.
We left at the right time.
So yeah, like I think interestingly, like the end of my filmmaking career, it like almost perfectly coincides with the beginning of Discovery. So like that look is something that really started right at that moment in film and video.
And in terms of genre is like the right fit. It's not about using all the toys because you can. Like, period drama does not get the 3-axis gimbal treatment ordinarily, but like,
unless you're like Yorgos Lanthimos or something,
Right, but my point being that like it feels like the future when you use future tech.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really hand in glove here when we're talking about a visual style for this show.
The greatest trick.
We have another question here from T. Earl Greyhot. It goes like this. What element did Discovery introduce to new Trek that you like most, and which one do you like the least? And I was going to answer this. I think the one that I like the most and the least might be the same one, and it's the comm badge that can transport you, because it's been used to such great effect in so many instances, like that fight sequence at the beginning of season 3 when they first unveiled the transporter, where they're beaming to different places and then running and then beaming to somewhere else. Like an absolutely awesome set piece, super memorable. And like there are also just so many moments in this past season that I've been really delighted by it. Like, okay, like I guess we're going to have to do an away mission. And then we're like in the away mission before anybody's even had a chance to pack a bag or whatever.
It expedites story in a big way.
Yeah, and it's like one of the things that feels the most like we are 1,000 years in the future about disco. But I think that like the more I thought about it, the more it also just kind of like changes the way I think about the set design. And I think that the sets should have been more radically redesigned in observance of the existence of this technology. There's a moment in the last episode where Michael Burnham comes back to her ready room after her experience inside the progenitor hole, and some people beam into the room and others walk in, and I'm like, why would you ever walk anywhere? You know, like if you can be like, it's kind of the same problem with the ship and the spore drive is like, if you can be anywhere in an instant, why would you ever take time to get anywhere? And it creates a ton of storytelling challenges for the show, but also I think that it would have been really interesting if they'd like, you know, throw away everything you know about the way a space that humans go to can look and feel, because this one doesn't have doors. Like, why would it need to?
And as a storytelling technology, you're taking away a main source of storytelling. Like, you're taking away opportunities for conversation between characters that are there in every other type of show.
Yeah. And Star Trek is so famous for the walk and talk down the hallway. And it's like...
Yeah, and in the far future, you have to come up with a reason or an excuse to do that.
Right.
It makes me think a lot about what a person's life in the future would be like absent the time to think. Like, the walking to a place, like transiting from place to place, is the main time that I think about things, you know? And if you lose that, what does that do to a person? Like, you hear and you think about all the time about like people are overworked and stressed out and they don't have time to take care of themselves. Try to think of a world without all of the connective tissue between those tasks, even, where it's just a dense lasagna of task on task on task. It sounds horrible, is what it sounds like.
Nobody needs dense za.
Lasagna za! Lasagna pizza za!
You never see the downside to how quickly you could expedite anything in the far future in a way that hearing you talk made me wonder a lot about. Like, I love my rumination time.
It keeps me sharp, on the edge, where I gotta be.
I mean, it would probably be better if I didn't have so much of it, but like to have none of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine.
I mean, like, when do people listen to podcasts in Discovery? It doesn't seem like they have chores. It doesn't seem like they ever have like a long drive.
Yeah.
I guess just like on the treadmill, when Book goes to the gym, he listens to podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of gyms, like being ambulatory is like the primary way a human being stays healthy. Like, if you don't even have to walk, what is going on there? Yeah, a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And a stunning choice, too, like from a creative standpoint, to just like go, yeah, we're going to take away a primary way to tell stories. Amazing.
It's so amazing and great. And also, I feel like they didn't fully think through everything it would change about the way life is lived.
Yeah. I think I've got a different spin on the answer to this question. I remember very early on in Star Trek Discovery, you remember meeting so many captains? Like Georgiou was new, and then when the fleet met the Klingons, you met a bunch of other captains there. It really felt like a show that expanded the Star Trek universe into the fleet. And that was a promise unrealized as time went on. But like, I really loved that element of like a broad Starfleet type show where we're not really like bouncing around from ship to ship, but like, I really love all those moments in TNG where we met DeSoto and we met other captains and we inferred different relationships between them. You get a little bit of that in Discovery and the McLaughlin groups at Starfleet HQ and stuff, but not to the extent that I think the show began with.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I liked the least about how the show trended was like, it felt so big early on. and things became narrower as time went on.
Yeah.
In a way that I wish had been maintained.
Yeah, like by the time we're in these later seasons, Admiral, who's good enough at his fine woodworking hobby that his friends wish he would quit his high-stress job and just focus on that for a while, kind of feels like the only person in Starfleet other than...
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we never met, like, anybody else that had ever worked with Rayner. Like, we'll just have to take your word for it that he had, like, a crew on his other ship.
Yeah. I regret that being the case.
Yeah.
Ben, our next question is from Zenter. That question goes like this. She, who is my wife, a casual fan of Trek, complained early in the show that it's too dark. Literally. In terms of lighting. And she commented the dialogue was also too whispery. She never got into the show as a result. Zenter went on to mention that, like, you know, editing bays have the highest quality screens and sound systems and are lit like movie theaters. So I remember this being a challenge as an editor myself. Like, you've got to edit both for yourself and the eventual viewer. This is a mistake I occasionally made, like, especially with sound. When I would hear my work get played somewhere else without the benefit of really good audio, I'd be like, oh, fuck. Like, I obviously should have turned it up.
Right.
Or compressed or tuned up the audio in a way that made it play better for everyone.
Yeah, I think that this is something affecting, like, almost all actors and shows and movies generally, is like the way sound is recorded now is has really changed. Like, you know, it's not like a boom mic that's 3 or 4 feet away from the mouth of the speaker. It's like often we're picking up the audio of the people on set with little microphones that are hid in their costumes. So they're really close to their mouths. And so they can capture very quiet sounds, but quiet sounds are still quiet and still, you know, like the peaks are less far away from the valleys in the waveform when people are speaking quietly. Like there's the signal to noise ratio is just different. So when people in old TV shows were forced to project so that the mics could pick up clear audio, like people could be understood, but also didn't sound as naturalistic as they do now. But like what we have gained in naturalism, we have like totally lost in comprehensibility. And I think we're all going through this, right? Like we're all like riding the volume rocker on our TVs or like throwing closed captioning on because like we can't hear shit that's going on in our TV shows.
Zenter had a question at the end, like, are there choices you would have made differently in terms of visual feel? I don't think so. Like, this is the way modern television looks and sounds. Like,
yeah.
Would I like the blacks a little less crushed in the shadows? Would I like lower contrast? I don't know. Like, this is a high-spec show made for HD television. Mm-hmm. And I don't think New Star Trek is the only show to be like, if you don't have a sound bar, fuck you. Like, they don't care. No one cares.
Yeah.
Like, get on their level or don't is kind of what feels like is the vibe for media coming out these days.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mentioned the sound bar is a thing, but like movie theaters are not absent this problem. I have a hard time hearing dialogue in movie theaters too. And those are the optimal conditions for sound.
Yeah. It is not like actors wagging the technology dog or technology wagging the acting dog. It is two things in conversation with each other, and also the totally insane variety of devices that we are consuming all this media on being like almost impossible to mix things properly for. Like you can't mix for your premiere at the Cinerama Dome and for people's TVs and for people's iPhones and for people's laptops and have it sound flawless on all of the things. And like when you master an album, like you try for that, right? Like when you take music and go into the mastering phase, like they've got like crazy super high end speakers that they're listening to it on, but they also are playing it out of little transistor radios and like car speakers and stuff, because it's like the dark art of trying to get sound to sound the best under the most possible conditions. And I don't know. I hope we're not like coming across as like apologizing for the show being like hard to watch and listen to, because I think that that's like a valid criticism, but it's not Star Trek that's doing that, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's also impossible to create a thing that works in every possible condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever told this story on the show, but like the crowning achievement of my freelance video production work occurred when I got to make a video for Giant Airplane Company that played at a baseball game, at a Mariner game in the stadium. And I got to work with Tom Skerritt, and I got a big old budget for it, and it was killer. It was something that I was proud of, and I still am. And I went to the stadium days before this project was going to premiere there, and we QA'd it on the screen, and we heard it in the stadium, and it sounded great, and it looked great. And we got to use like all the LEDs around the belt line. Oh. Like it was killer. It was so cool. And the part I don't remember saying on the show was that on game day, when this thing played, like in between innings, I didn't account for the din of a sellout crowd. Yeah. And so all you could hear were the extremes. Like you could hear Tom Skerritt mostly. You could hear the music pretty well, but it was heartbreaking to not be able to hear it clearly, because I wrote that script and he read it and it was awesome. And like very few people got to experience it the way that it was meant to. And my point in telling that story is like, if you're in an edit bay, you have some idea of how it's going to be heard, but you just can't account for every single condition. I think you could do better. To your point, Ben, like it could be mixed better. It really could. We could bring that dialogue up. That's definitely possible.
Everything can be mixed better. Like, like it's time and money, you know?
Yeah.
That's the constraining factors.
Yeah.
We need to score a lot of Latin fast.
Licensed businessman.
This ship and her history will shortly become the care of another crew. They will continue the voyage as we have begun.
The greatest trek.
All right. Rhythm Robber asked, in retrospect, how do you feel Discovery fared by focusing primarily on a single character versus the ensemble being more evenly presented? Was it just a different type of Trek doing things ensemble Trek couldn't, or was it more at odds with the core premise of Trek?
Too late in the game, I coined the term Spider-Man Michael Burnham as a way to like organize my thoughts about how the main character of the show functions as a storytelling device. And I've been thinking a lot about that, and my core theory about Star Trek, my core belief is that Star Trek is a place to tell stories. Star Trek is not a ship or a character or a time or any of those other things. It's a universe that you can do this in. And I've kind of come full circle about this, because as Discovery went on, I was like, it was clear it was becoming more and more centered on one figure, and there were consequences to that choice as time went on. But Star Trek is a place where you can tell a story about one character, and it would be hypocritical of me to say it's wrong, because I believe one thing more than anything else: Star Trek is a place. That is like the central organizing belief that I have about it. And I don't have any problem with it when I step to think about it. This was a story about Michael Burnham. And maybe the problem was that it did not begin in that way specifically. It got more and more focused on her character as time went on, instead of maybe becoming so sharply focused on her from jump.
Yeah, but I think that I'm glad that it exists as a kind of Star Trek series that can now be a precedent going forward. Like if they're going to keep making shows that are set in the Star Trek universe, which I really hope they do.
If they make Star Trek Khan, are you going to be bummed if we're on Khan's character the whole time?
Right. I think there's something kind of amazing about how unique Star Trek Discovery has become in that respect.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that they had the courage of their convictions on that note. Like, I think that there's plenty to like criticize about Discovery and plenty of ways that, like this could have been better, or that could have been better, or this was a little clunky. But like that, I think primary character focus thing feels stronger and stronger as a choice to me, the further I get from it. And yeah, like we've joked about how we don't know anybody in the bridge crew and never really have. And yet they do provide like a very consistent texture to the background of all of these Michael Burnham stories that we've experienced now. And isn't that what life is like? Like there are like the kind of people that you interact with all the time in your story, and then there are the people that are like, oh, like they're also here, but like I don't really know them, you know?
Right. The folks in your life that you refer to as NPCs, Ben.
Right.
The lesser people.
Your wife. The people that work at the grocery store. The postal carrier, who gives a shit?
Yeah, I'm with you. It represents a way to do it that I don't think is invalid. It did make for great comedy as time went on.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it.
One of the poll questions we got from the Discord was, name this character. And it was a picture of a group of a bridge crew person. I honestly couldn't. Ben, we got a question here from Destructor. How do you feel about the time jump? Do you feel the show was stronger before or after the end of the second season?
Boy, interesting question. Like, I think this will divide people again, like the choice to make the show so centered on Michael Burnham. But I feel personally that the time jump was brilliant because the show was starting to strain credulity in terms of like they had this fucking ship before the Enterprise, and the Enterprise was supposed to be the one going and doing the most amazing shit.
You had to take it off the board.
You got to get it out of there.
Yeah.
And I thought that they found like such a clever way to do it where it's like, okay, like this is all disavowed, like nobody will know about this having been a thing, and it's gone to a future that can be like a totally wide open space for them to write new stories in. And I think that like the nature of the conflicts and the nature of the stories in the future is really different. And like I think that one thing they really lost was that feeling of like, here is the big fleet and here are all the other people in it, and like we kind of know a little bit about them. And I think that's a shame because I don't think that there's any reason once they start to like rebuild Starfleet after solving the burn, any reason they couldn't have gone back to that. But I guess by that point they were just so laser focused on the like star-crossed love of Michael Burnham and book that there wasn't time in their 10 episode season runs to work stuff like that in.
I mean, it's interesting how almost as much of a significant moment in the show was the introduction of book. As significant as the time jump was itself, the idea to give Michael Burnham a romantic interest was something that changed the show forever.
Yeah. It didn't seem like it could be Ash Tyler for...
Yeah. Yeah, boy, look at me forgetting Ash Tyler already. That's unfortunate. He was such a big part of this show.
I know.
I think that moment of time jump represents maybe my favorite part of the entire series, though. I thought that was beautiful and brilliant and emotional and all the things that Star Trek makes me feel when Star Trek is at its best. I love that moment. The moments leading up to it and the immediate aftermath, I thought were what represented the best parts of Discovery, really.
Totally.
The greatest trek
Is yet to come.
Well, Adam, do you want to jump over to our conversation we had with Rob Schulte?
Oh, yeah. Rob Schulte was the very first producer on this show back when it was called Greatest Discovery, back when we only thought there would be Star Trek Discovery as a new Star Trek show.
Yeah.
And we thought this whole thing would be fairly temporary. And little did we know what a big, big deal this show would become. And what a big deal Rob Schulte would become after quitting.
Yeah, we were kind of the lead weight on the string of his balloon.
Love our time with Rob Schulte, and here to tell us all about the drama of our version of the show. We know about the drama starting Star Trek Discovery, but what was the drama behind the Greatest Discovery? We had to go to someone who lived it, Rob Schulte, the first producer of a show that became Greatest Trek. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hey guys, I'm so happy to be here. My life has been nothing but drama ever since Greatest Discovery. So
you got hooked on it, right?
Yeah, I need it.
Yeah. He's a messy bitch. He loves the drama.
I live for it. Give it to me.
You ever think about your life in 2017 and how it led you to where you are today?
Every moment. I remember being barefoot, waiting for my wallet to be returned to me from a lift and going, "Hey, Ben, I didn't think I was going to see anyone see me barefoot in the streets of New York right now. How's that podcast job going?"
Oh, man, I didn't remember the detail that you were barefoot. That's great.
Well, don't worry. There was a couple of times where I was in precarious situations. So.
Right, yeah. And then we were like getting ready to gear up for this show because we knew that this new Star Trek series was going to be coming out. And Adam and I were already approaching burnout with the one show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we knew we were going to need some help to get episodes edited and posted. And so we asked you, and fortunately you were available.
Yeah, I mean, and that was huge for me. And I'm sure longtime FODs know this story over and over again, but like I was really like struggling like to get into quote the industry and the lifestyle.
Oh,
but
yeah.
And you guys welcomed me into both, so it was great. No, it really was, because I'd been working with Mike Sachs for a while, who we all know, and that was fun and a great podcast. But you know, being able to like do something on a schedule consistently. Not only was it like fun to work with you guys, but like also learning as I grow to work with a team. You know, that was necessary tools for everything that went forward in my podcasting career.
These were aspects to you that Ben told me that you already had.
No, well, I was really good at saying like, I know how.
I really just had to trust Ben about hiring you at the time. I didn't know anything about the barefoot story.
Well, you know, this.
I'm glad I didn't, in retrospect.
I was new. I didn't know how dirty New York was. And at that point in time, when a Lyft driver says, "I'm returning your wallet or phone or whatever it was now," like I was like, I got to get out there.
Yeah.
I'll never see this again.
What do you remember about like the run up to Star Trek Discovery as a thing?
I was actually very excited about hearing that a new Star Trek show was coming out, because I hadn't really been a Star Trek kid leading up to it, but everything looked really cool about Star Trek Discovery. And, you know, meeting Ben previously, I had started listening to Greatest Gen, and I was like, well, I like this. Now I'm pairing it with TNG episodes, but you guys were towards the end of TNG at that point in time. So I would, you know, hunt and peck and find fun episodes and see what people are talking about. And I did start to really like TNG. And then I was on board once we knew Discovery was coming out. I was like, well, I just need to watch all of TNG. And then I'm going to be following along with DS9, because also I needed to know your guys' style of podcasting, right? And I, you know, dick, fart, poop, pee-pee. And then I got it. It was great.
Not that hard.
What do you remember about the production challenges at the time? Because this was at a point where we didn't get screeners. We had to watch it on the date that anyone else was. I remember the turns being pretty fast, yeah?
Yeah. I luckily had a fair amount of free time, so I was like eager to like watch the show, get the recording, and then edit the recordings. So
And this was at a point in time when I was still living in Seattle,
Yep.
Ben was in New York, and you were in New York?
Yep.
Yeah, except for I think I watched the first episode of Discovery when we were like leaving New York. We were like in the process of moving to LA when that first episode dropped.
Whoa.
I think.
Oh, that is right. Because we had done casual other things as well, but like Discovery was like hit the road week to week, do this stuff. And that was the thing that became an issue, not an issue, but was like I always had to pay attention to was the fact that there's always going to be edits. There's always going to be at least 1 or 2 drafts of this thing, but you don't know how that process works until you get to like episode 3, right? So, I started spending like that first episode. I was like, this has to be perfect. This has to be the funniest version of this episode because I'm so lucky to be working with these guys. And this is, all me, what's going on in my head. And like, I just want to present them perfection.
Yeah.
And
Little did you know, you were not lucky to be working with us.
We laugh, but we had fun.
I mean, you're way down the road now in terms of a career as a podcast producer. Like, as far as the mechanics of our projects, like, is that how it goes, or how it went for you as your career continued? Like, we QA a show amongst us all before it ever goes out. We note it before a final edit. Like, how did that prepare you for what was to come?
Well, I'll tell you, anytime nowadays that I'm like lead on a project for a show or something, it's the process I use because it's the process that I learned working with you all. So it's always like, we'll record, we'll schedule, we'll do all the things that need to do in pre-production and recording. And then I'm going to edit something and then you give me notes on it, but notes need to be due X, Y, and Z, right? When I've worked in other, like when I worked with Team Coco, there was a few more cooks in the kitchen, spoons in the soup. Mm-hmm. Let's workshop this joke a little bit more sort of situation. But it all bare bones comes to exactly the process we've always did. And I assume you guys continue to this day because it's perfect, like give someone the reins and then pull them back a little bit when you're like, you know what? We need the no water drop in this section.
Right. I mean, it just allows a project to evolve. And I think that came from our experience working in video. Like, we're just working with cuts and nothing's ever done until a deadline tells you that it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say, the most fun I had editing this show was, over time we collect like a type of drop or a fun thing that's always going to hit this button at this point. And I always knew where we were going to put those sorts of things in, ice cream, truck music, that sort of stuff, right? But being able to like find a moment where like this deep part of my reptile brain was like, there's actually a line from Seinfeld or from Tommy Boy or something that like isn't even necessarily a punchline in the movie, but would go good tacked on to the end of this. That was always the most rewarding part for me.
You're talking about a unified theory of greatest gen comedy that we've always believed in, which was additive and not repetitive, and that anything funny can be an amplifier to something that is already pretty funny.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We've edited every show thinking that way.
And what's really nice is that like some of that stuff also didn't stay because it didn't work. Like it was a hat on a hat. Sometimes, you're just on a roll and you're like, well, what if we added this, this, or this? And then we have that editing process that you guys talk about where it's like, yeah, I get where you're coming from on this joke, Rob, but like the joke stands as it is, And that was like a learning process for me too, to be like, sometimes something is just funny.
Yeah. Put your ensemble together and then take one thing away.
Yes.
Well, Rob, it's been a long emotional journey, and we would not be here if you hadn't started it with us. So we want to say thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you and all your work kicking this thing off.
I really appreciate it, guys.
Can you let people know what you're working on these days now that you've left us in your dust?
Yeah. Well, I think the most notable thing for your listeners would probably be the Patreon podcast I do with Bill Tilley called Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun. Bill introduces me to movies I never knew existed, like Doll Man. And it keeps me up at night, but I have fun doing it.
I mean, resource is a pretty big word for what he's able to provide in that area, but
Yes.
He's great.
And then there might be a smaller fraction of your audience that likes the reality TV show Vanderpump Rules, which been aptly titled Vanderpump Robs for my podcast. And I've been doing that ever since, and it's a fun little side project, and I love doing it. And I build everything, since it's a recap show, off of the humor that we did with Greatest Discovery, Greatest Trek.
Amazing.
I remember riding a trolley in San Francisco when you had the idea for Vanderpump, what would become Vanderpump Robs.
It's
amazing.
Who knew?
I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now, but I'm happy for your success.
All right, Rob Schulte, it's been a little slice of heaven having you on Greatest Trek. We'll see you soon, man.
All righty. Thanks for having me, guys. I really, really had a blast working with y'all and staying friends all this time later.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robs.
You're welcome.
She'll always bring it home.
Okay, Adam, it's time to look at some of these polls that our social media director, Rob Adler, put together for us.
Ben, what's your favorite season of Disco and why? That was one of the poll questions. We have a lot of answers here from FODs, but I'm wondering what yours is.
Man, so I think that maybe tied for favorite are season 2 and season 5.
Mm-hmm.
I thought 5 was like by far the most consistently good season.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought there were only like 1 or 2 episodes where I was like, that one was a little off. Season 2, that like the Red Angel reveal stuff in season 2 was just like so fucking exciting and great.
Mm-hmm.
And the Christopher Pike stuff.
Yeah, that's the connective tissue to Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, and like I thought, that both elements of that just made season 2 like such a hoot for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be my answer. How about you?
I think it's season 2 for me, for sure. My favorite story and my favorite climax to this whole thing. Here are some other answers from FODs on the socials. Lindsay the Librarian says seasons 1 and 2 are tied for me because I actually love the reimagined Klingons and thought the body reconstruction for one to be a sleeper agent was so brutal and bold and powerful. Additionally, I love the Red Angel arc and seeing a secret history of Star Trek canon that ultimately jumped to the future. Yeah, that Klingon stuff, Ben, controversial from jump.
Yeah.
I remember having mixed feelings at the time. I think I look at it fondly now.
Yeah.
In retrospect.
Yeah, I do too. Good call, Lindsay the Librarian. Bodie Lens says, I'm nostalgic for season 1 because of Jason Isaacs as Gabe Lorca. I kind of resent the rest of the seasons for not finding a way to bring him back.
Right.
There were lost opportunities even in the latest season with the time jumping episode. I'm sure there were financial and logistical reasons, but dang, it would have been great fun. That's like that. I mean, that like he went missing and is unaccounted for element of Prime Lorca is something that I really wish that they'd figured out a way to do something with.
I mean, maybe he pops up in Strange New Worlds.
That would be great. There's still a chance.
Yeah, I think so too. Hope so. A bunch of mentions of season 2. Control not being something you and I have talked about on this episode up until now.
Yeah.
I love Control. I love the Control story.
Contreland was great.
I've used this word a bunch talking about season 2, but like that crescendo, like the build into the end of that season, just great. Just great how the stakes got raised and raised and raised and raised. Contreland, super fun.
One of the great villain deaths too, like Contreland like coming apart at the molecular level in the Spork box.
Yeah. We got Nan saying yum yum
Yum, yum.
in a way that just broke my brain. I mean, and we can't go past this season without talking about the idea of an Emperor Georgiou getting her own Section 31 show and the mixed feelings we have about it. The positive feelings being in favor of a Michelle Yeoh doing anything, being great, and just the idea of redeeming the irredeemable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be a theme to season 5 of Star Trek Discovery too. Like Maul being the Emperor Georgiou light character. Like her crimes were not nearly as bad, but like the idea that you can redeem anyone if you just keep trying.
If you just keep hanging tear and talking about your feelings,
yeah,
you can do it.
Yeah.
All right. Another question that Rob put to the Instagram: favorite disco drop or bit? And
do you have one of those, Ben?
One of my faves that was also Rex Thrillo's fave is all of the different names we came up with for the Admiral who will casually mention getting lunch with Salman Rushdie like it ain't no thing. Like, it's always fun to write those. Like, I felt like sincere writer's block in a way that like is pretty rare in our, like, because we just feed bits at each other and then they always come back. But like, I always try to have at least a couple of those on my notepad before we sit down to record an episode about this show, just in case I need to talk about him.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's something that we are trying to capture about this guy. And like, I feel like we are the blind men describing the elephant in a way.
Yeah.
It's about vibes. And the list is really long now. Like there's that fandom wiki about our show. And there's just a great big long list of those. And every so often I'll go look at that. And it's just really funny to look at how many different ways we've characterized this dude.
Done with love too. Like that. I wish I looked like this guy.
Yeah. God, fucking hunk.
Wynde, our great producer, has promised to put together a supercut of greatest hits.
Damn, that's really exciting.
If she did, here is where we would play that. Does Admiral I really have 2 flasks on me at all times really have 2 flasks on him at all times?
Admiral who gets hit on by all the moms when he picks his kid up from school.
As much of a jerk as Admiral Just for Men is being, like, I totally get it.
So we get some time with Admiral, the photo that comes in an executive picture frame.
Good job, Admiral Uncle your dad never talks about because they don't see eye to eye politically. Like, he's connected the dots here.
Admiral Erectile Dysfunction Medication Spokesmodel.
Admiral School Principal who's not mad, he's just disappointed.
Admiral stock photo on a wealth management company website's office.
Admiral September 2014 cover model of Yachting Life magazine.
Admiral cigar aficionado.
Admiral stern stepdad you didn't understand growing up, but now that you're an adult, you sort of understand why he was the way he was.
Admiral Johnny Quest villain.
Admiral too busy to play catch with his son because he's really busy with work.
Michael Burnham has to go up to Admiral. You can't precisely smell his cologne, but the room just feels classier when he's in it.
Admiral, I think I see the air marshal on this flight.
Yeah, Admiral Swiss bank account haver.
Nor is it illuminated by Admiral definitely has season tickets to the symphony even if he has to go by himself.
Also, why is Admiral Bottle Service not the one here casting the vote?
And Kovich has been empowered by Admiral Blackjack Dealer in a cruise ship casino to kind of take over the problem of Zora.
Admiral Dad, who gets his email hacked in an embarrassingly simple phishing scheme, is fucking pissed.
Admiral Police Captain in a gritty crime thriller that's a casting mistake because he's distractingly attractive.
Listen, Admiral mansplaining his trauma to somebody who's experienced equivalent or greater trauma.
We cut back over to Admiral. I trusted someone who broke my heart, and I may never get over it.
Admiral Secret Service agent attached to the presidential detail one last time throws himself in front of this bullet.
When Rillick tells Admiral a little too willing to have that first talk about the birds and the bees with his kids.
According to Admiral, dad who voices sort of retrograde racial opinions at Thanksgiving dinner.
Admiral, it's so weird to see him in a grocery store instead of teaching my poli-sci class.
Admiral, final opponent in a movie about a chess tournament.
Admiral seems a little too old to be a bartender, but when you see how much he enjoys his work, you kind of understand it. And Tilly, have a nice moment here.
We need a resignation letter from Admiral who once seemed like an honorable man, but that veneer has just worn away under any amount of public scrutiny.
Yeah. Admiral, my family is gonna die anyway. Kind of gives Tilly the look.
Admiral, my wife gave me an extremely unlikely hall pass, but well, here we are.
Admiral, I'm just living my dream here, pouring shots the way I always wanted to. Back when I had a square office job.
Admiral, guy in a travel show giving a tour of his 100-year-old olive farm.
Let's just say that Admiral, random guy in a testosterone commercial that stars Frank Thomas, gives you the thing.
Admiral, I picked the wrong day to stop drinking rice and whiskey. Just kind of hangs out with Tilly on the bridge, and they kind of prepare for the end of the world.
It takes Admiral, is this guy flirting with me or just really, really good looking?
Admiral gets a pedicure every week from one of those leather chair and scotch tumbler nail salons that doesn't threaten your masculinity.
The home that Admiral Guy you're somehow rooting for, even though he's the bad guy in a World War II movie.
Admiral Dean of Academics comes and covers for her.
Admiral Guy you think of when you think of a guy who drives a BMW is like...
Yeah, I mean, it is Admiral Guy who's really into medium format photography because it's artistic, but it's also really expensive.
Emotionally unavailable, like Admiral Guy who mentioned some detail about your wife in a group conversation that you didn't know, and now all of a sudden you're wondering if there's something going on between them.
She and Admiral, who definitely has a bottle membership at a Japanese whiskey bar.
Admiral Guy who works in the wine section at a grocery store that you ask for something nice, but not too expensive. And he's like, I got just the thing. And every time you go back to the store, you look for him, but he's never there. And now you're wondering if he was ever there to begin with.
Yeah, what the hell? Admiral Guy urging me to put my money into an index fund rather than try to bet on individual stocks.
Admiral, when all you've ever done is scowl, it's kind of terrifying to see anything else, and honestly, I prefer you the other way. Smiling.
Admiral, who makes every room he walks into smell just a little bit better. Really freaked me out in this moment.
Admiral gym teacher at an all-women's school.
They get a FaceTime request from Admiral, just look at me, of course I have top secret clearance.
Admiral a little too old to be a server at Applebee's, and it makes you wonder what's going on in his life that has led him to this. Have I used that one?
I think so. That
sounds
new to me.
All right.
I kind of feel like this was on screen just so the writers could give Admiral Sociologist interviewed in a documentary about a cult an opportunity to say the S word.
It's pretty good for shit.
Anyways, I've got to go.
Ben, I recall clearly trying to make the DMA drop at you. And like, that's kind of the genesis of so many bits between us, is like, what is going to get the co-host to laugh or to get riled up or whatever. And I was like, Ben loves rap. He loves it so much. What if I do a DMX song at him? It seemed perfect.
I loved it.
The lyrics lined up.
Come on!
DMA! Cause if I want it, I gotta come and get it. Stamets is with it. It's crashing the moons into planets, baby. Birds have died. What does this thing want? What does this thing want? DMA! It was such a mystery for so long that we got to play that drop. I think every episode of season 4 we played that drop.
That was also just like so perfectly your sense of humor to me, because it's like, it's this thing that like
the first time we see it, it's destroying Quajon, and it's like the thing that traumatizes Book into becoming a war criminal, and like it's like the saddest, most gut-wrenching thing in the show, and you turn it into this like party jam.
Yeah. I'm not gonna wallow. I'm getting us out of the ditch with a banger.
Pete Cully shouted out the Haz Mazzaro Karma barge drop.
Classic.
God, what a fucking drop.
Yeah. That's all Wynde there.
Another question that was posted on Mastodon. Fuck, marry, kill disco villains. Harry Mudd, Captain Lorca, and Contreland.
I feel like with this type of question, tell me if you agree, I always want to start with Mary. Like, that is the way I can kind of reduce the fraction a little bit. Like, who could I live with? I feel like Control would always try to kill me, so it couldn't be Control. Yeah. And that leaves Harry Mudd and Captain Lorca. I'm going to say Harry Mudd, and here's why. Harry Mudd's eventually going to leave me, so... Like, I'm going to be fine.
Temporary condition.
Yeah, in a very short amount of time, I'll be fine. So I'm going to marry Harry Mudd. I mean, Control can probably reach all the places. I'm going to say fuck Control.
Oh, sure.
And I guess that leaves killing Captain Lorca. I'd hate to do it. One of my favorite characters. One of my favorite bad guys. But marry Harry Mudd, kill Captain Lorca, fuck Control is my vote. What about you?
I think your logic is persuasive to me on the Harry Mudd question, but the reaching all the placesness of Control makes me not want to fuck Control. And also killing Control, one of my favorite visuals that the show ever did. So I think kill Control just for the lulls, and then fuck Lorca because hubba hubba.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw that guy with his shirt off a bunch.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks to all the FODs who participated in our solicitation for polls and for topics this episode.
Yeah.
I feel like that touched a lot of things we wanted to discuss.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone who stuck with us through all 5 seasons of Discovery. Adam, do you want to head into the P1 inbox with me and see if there's anything in there?
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Oh boy, Ben, we got a Priority 1 message here from Patrick, and it's to Kevin, you son of a bitch.
Okay.
Their message goes like this. Submitting a P1 and calling me out without even giving me a chance to contribute financially beforehand? Now instead of contributing to a single P1, I have to buy a whole separate P1 just to correct the record? I clued you into this show in the first place and got us into the Atlanta show. Patrick requested Taffer, and Taffer appeared.
Wow. Amazing. A good friend is someone who pimps you into supporting a podcast that you both enjoy. And also, Priority 1 messages are an important source of support for podcasts like Greatest Trek, and you can get one by going to MaximumFun.org/Jumbotron. It's $100 for a commercial message, and Bar Science tells us it's $200 for a commercial message.
Do it before I hang the URL up in your house. Hey, Ben?
What's that, Adam?
For the entire series of Star Trek Discovery, did you discover yourself an Edward Larkin?
Edward Larkin! Man, this is a great question, because I'm like thinking, do we give it to a character that's having the most fun of anyone in the series, or do we have to confine it to one of the people that we made it through the whole series with? Like, there's not that many, right?
I mean, some Larkins are so bright, they faded away quickly. You know, they burned so hot.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't long for the series.
I think I'm going to give it to Jet Reno. Jet Reno is just such a breath of fresh air in this show. Jet Reno is like so compatible with so much about this show, but also provides such a nice contrast because Jet Reno never walks into a room to like connect on a deep emotional basis with everybody in there. You know, Jet Reno's always doing bits and is off in her own space, being her own person. But every time she's on screen, just a delight. And I think her role deserves some recognition in that respect.
Great pick.
Did you have an Edward Larkin for the whole series?
So at the end of season 2, Emperor Giorgio asks Nan if she would like to see Leland scream. And Nan says, "Yum, yum."
Yum, yum.
She said, "Yum, yum," Ben.
She did say yum, yum.
What does that even mean? How does that answer the question? Does she delight in the torture of a person? And to what extent did that inspire her work in Starfleet security? Kind of a
Dark Larkin.
I think that line of dialogue, I want an oral history about how that happened.
Yeah. Was that in the script?
I think about it all the time. If I ever run into Rachel Ancheril at a convention, that's the question I'd ask.
Wow. I hope we do. I hope we get to answer that question.
Yeah.
It's time to turn our attention to the Friends of DeSoto one last time in this episode for a warning bois. We have this segment at the end of every episode of Greatest Trek just to shout out nice things that folks have said about our show online. It's a great free way to support the show, and when people go out of the way to help spread the word about our show, we like to give them some shine here in the warning bois.
Prepare a buoy and launch it when ready.
Warning buoys.
An emergency buoy. A warning buoy.
This review from Apple Podcasts for Greatest Trek has 5 stars, and it says, "Always great. Having listened to Greatest Generation since season 1, it has been great to have Ben and Adam's companionship as we've sailed into a new era of Star Trek. I followed along since day 1 with this feed when it was still Greatest Discovery. I look forward to each episode, and I realized I foolishly never left a review here. Time to fix that. Thanks, Ben and Adam, for the great pod."
Amazing. 5 stars, the right amount of stars, I think.
Yeah. Our other smash hit Star Trek podcast, The Greatest Generation, recently crossed 5,000 reviews on Apple Podcasts in the US. And I think Greatest Trek should honestly beat it. You know, if you're listening, if you haven't left a review, what are you doing?
Ben, we have never done this before, but I'm going to add a second warning bois onto this.
Okay.
It's a review of Greatest Trek, and it's got 5 stars too.
All right.
Ben and Adam are the best parasocial friends a person could hope to experience new Trek with. Looking forward, everyone knows that Battlestar Galactica isn't canonical Trek. What this review supposes is, maybe it is, to the podcast. So say we all.
Wow. Interesting timing on that warning bois.
That's right, Ben. So many FODs have been asking, what are we going to do with the time that we have between new Star Trek episodes? And originally, here's a little glimpse behind the pod, we thought we'd have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Time to watch so many things, maybe an entirely different show for an entire first season. We watched a ton of shows during pilot season, and one really rose above the rest in terms of the sort of excitement we felt watching it, the sort of excitement and enthusiasm it made FODs feel across the socials.
Catch up.
Ben, I'm talking about Battlestar Galactica.
We are calling this run of episodes Hot Cylon Summer.
No one should feel obligated to join this mission.
Get the hashtag trending. Hot Cylon Summer coming to you in 2024, starting next week. And we are slightly modifying what we announced in our new monthly newsletter last month. We are going to be proceeding with our plan to do Hot Cylon Summer first. And we're going to do the first season of Battlestar Galactica in this feed for the next several months. And then we will start to pick up episodes of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2.
So there you have it. Hot Cylon Summer, 13 straight weeks of Battlestar Galactica Season 1.
Yeah.
Excited to get into it. Followed by Star Trek Prodigy. Followed by Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah, probably.
Ben, you made great show art for this. I love it.
Check on the socials for the Hot Cylon Summer reveal.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to wrap myself in a Hot Cylon Summer beach towel, dry off my areas, and enjoy the next 13 weeks. It's going to be great.
And you can wrap yourself in a Hot Cylon Summer beach towel as well by going to podshop.biz. That's a real thing that we made.
Sure did.
I did have to explain to my wife why I ordered a bunch of Barbie bathing suits off of the internet, but I think that, anybody that sees what I've come up with will understand.
There is no way she believes your reason, right? Like that much is clear?
Yeah.
Ben, I noticed a blanket and pillows in the studio. Imagine that's an ongoing issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a perfectly nice space to sleep out here.
Yeah.
And I have my Cylon and my Barbie bathing suits to keep me company.
Knock on my door! Knock next time!
I am so excited to begin Hot Cylon Summer with you, and that's coming up next week, Ben. So FODs won't have to wait very long to get started on this brand new series on this feed.
Hashtag Hot Cylon Summer. Let the people know, and we will be back at you next week. We'll let Wynde take it home from here.
Greatest Trek is an Uxbridge Shimoda podcast on the Maximum Fun Network. It's hosted by Ben Harrison and Adam Pranica, and it's produced and edited by Wynde Priddy. Next week, we're jumping into Hot Cylon Summer, starting with Season 1, Episode 1 of Battlestar Galactica, 33. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the Greatest Trek YouTube channel. Another free way to support is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or on whatever podcatcher you use. The most direct way to make sure we can keep going is to support monthly as a member. Members get access to a ton of bonus content, and we appreciate and rely on their support at MaximumFun.org/join. Nick Ditmore created the show art, and Adam Ragusia composed the theme music you hear on each episode. Thanks to Bill Tilley and Rob Adler for all their work on the @Greatest Trek social media pages. You can find and follow those wherever you are, and use the hashtag Greatest Trek when you post about the show online. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week for Hot Cylon Summer on Greatest Trek.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
Directly
by you.